welcome everyone. If you could put your information, name, and your affiliation in the chat, we would appreciate it. I'll be introducing us briefly, and then we're going to go launch right into growing apprenticeships in the San Francisco Bay region. So thank you. I do see some folks still entering. Thank you and welcome. So we have a group of panelists, perhaps too many, but you'll just get lots of good information, and we're all great people. I'll be moderating. I am currently leading the regional joint venture, and I'll explain to you what that is in the San Francisco Bay region. As I've seen some of you come in, I think you do know because you're part of it. But for those who are not, I'll briefly tell you what that is. We have Randi Wolfe from ECEPTS, and she'll be describing what that is. Joya, Chavarin, and Lisa Cook are from Berkeley City College, which launched an apprenticeship program already, and I'll tell you about that process. We have Tina Watts from Skyline College, a new evolving apprenticeship program that's in the works. Tracy Burt from City College of San Francisco, who has launched a program and is starting small, but we'll describe that process. Aleah Rosario with Partnership for Children and Youth, formerly with the CAN Afterschool Network, and she was charged with developing an extended learning apprenticeship project for after-school workers. So she'll give you an update on that. And we have Adele Burns, our regional San Francisco Bay Region Director of Apprenticeship, who will also be talking to you. So with this marvelous panel, everyone will get 30 seconds, and we're gonna get going. So thank you for attending. As you're coming in, introduce yourself in the chat, your name and affiliation. We'd like to know who's here. And I want to give you a quick overview. The regional joint venture was funded by the Bay Area Community College Consortium, and the consortium has prioritized the ECEEDU sector, and that's the sector that encompasses both K-12 teacher pipelines, early childhood teacher pipelines, and the extended learning workforce after school pipeline, in addition to other folks who are engaged in school-based and childcare-based employment. So I'm trying to be as broad as possible. ECU, EDU encompasses everything that we do and more, having to do with working with children and youth in a range of educational settings. Community colleges particularly prioritize linking to jobs that those entering our pipeline can obtain after completing community college coursework. In other words, the jobs related to the courses we offer, as well as preparing folks to transfer to gain additional work. So we have we stay in our lane and are really focused on jobs that they call them terminal jobs. It sounds horrible, but jobs that folks can get after completing community college courses and that lead to pipelines that students need additional educational training for. So this apprenticeship was prioritized by vote by the San Francisco Bay region. It was a very democratic vote. People prioritized the sector 4 years ago. They prioritized it again, and they prioritized apprenticeship by providing Adele Burns, and she is an apprenticeship director for the region. So we actually have a director that focuses on all apprenticeships, and this particular regional joint venture focuses on ECE and EDU. So Adele and I work together, and our job is really to promote apprenticeship and pipelines in this sector. We're funded by strong workforce funding funds through the Community College Chancellor's Office. We're structured as a regional joint venture, meaning that every college in our region can participate, can benefit from our work, and is considered part of our joint venture if they're interested. Of our 28 community colleges in our region, 24 have ECE and or EDU departments. So it's a heavily populated sector in our region. We rank number 5 in 4 or 5, depending on what year we look at. I think one year we were 3 in student enrollments in our sector. So very high participation of our colleges, high enrollments. And that really led to why we're prioritizing the sector. So why apprenticeship? What did we have to do to prove our case? We proved that we have significant labor shortages in the sector prior to the pandemic. And now that the pandemic, we're in the midst of it, off the hook labor shortages in our region. In San Francisco Bay region, those of you who live here know it's a high cost of living area. So we don't have to talk about that anymore. If you don't live here, trust me, it is. We've had significant disruption of our labor market here in the San Francisco Bay region due to the COVID pandemic. Many of our schools are just starting for the first time our K-12, TK-12 schools this week. So, or next week. So we've had students that have not seen each other in a year and a half in person. We have significant concern in our region that the federal and state expansion funds in childcare, the transitional kindergarten funds, and expanded learning funds will not be able to be fully utilized because we won't have the workforce. And so, you know, you cannot open a room without a teacher, right? Or a worker or staff. We know public support for K-12 teachers and childcare rose during the pandemic. We know about the disruption of school and childcare, and it impacted our enrollment at the community college level. Most of our San Francisco Bay region colleges lost enrollment. And clearly there's a link between having children unsupervised and being able to attend college. So, or even on Zoom. And you're going to hear more about apprenticeship and the benefits of having a structured pipeline that's tied to jobs. Here in these high cost regions, students need work, they need structure, they need to work and go to school, they need wage gains, and they need on-the-job training and college and employment partnerships. So you'll hear more about the efforts in our region. So I'd like to begin by introducing Adele Burns. And Adele, let me know if you want me to stop share, or you want me to just share your slides. You can just say next slide.
Yeah, you can just keep going in your deck. That's
okay,
fine.
Great.
Lovely. You. So hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here. And like Kathleen said, I am the Regional Director of Apprenticeship for the Bay Area Community College Consortium. And Kathleen, if you go to the next slide, just to give you a sense, this is the geographic scope of the Bay Area Community College Consortium. And as was mentioned, there are 28 community colleges in this region, and it has a heavy footprint of ECE and EDU training. And so this is the scope that my work covers in terms of supporting folks who are interested in creating new apprenticeship programs. If you go to the next slide. So what I hope to give you today is just a little bit of an overview of what is apprenticeship. Some of you probably know what it is, but I think it's really helpful to just have this definition of terms for any of you who are brand new to apprenticeship. So what apprenticeship fundamentally is it is a structured education and training program. So it is earn and learn, right? And but fundamentally, it is a full-time paid job, right? Somebody who is an apprentice is working and earning money and also learning. So this is not a training program. This is a a job with supported education is really what an apprenticeship is. So the two fundamental components of it are the on-the-job training, which is typically 2,000 hours. There's some flexibility in this that I'll get to, but typically it's 2,000 hours, which works out to be 1 year of full-time work. And you can think of the on-the-job training, it's just the time on the job. It's the time working in this role. And then that is complemented by classroom-based instruction. And you'll sometimes see this acronym in here, RSI, which is related and supplemental instruction. And there's a minimum of 144 hours that are required for it to be called an apprenticeship. So you have these two core components. And if you go to the next slide, Kathleen. So the related and supplemental instruction, the idea of this is that it is courses that are specifically tailored to the needs of an employer, right? And it's specifically upskilling an apprentice in their role, right? And so as we think about applying this in the education context, you know, somebody is working and taking classes that are helping them advance their skills. And those classes could count towards a college degree, right? But fundamentally, it's the classroom-based instruction. If you go to the next slide. And then the on-the-job component, what makes apprenticeship interesting is they have what's called a work process, which is, you can think of that kind of like a job description, but it's saying what somebody is going to learn when they're on the job, right? And that's the whole point of apprenticeship, is that there's a lot of learning by doing, and they'll have a designated mentor that's helping to train them on the job. And there does need to be this articulated skills progression, and there needs to be at least one wage increase that's associated with that skills progression. And an apprentice can start off earning as little as 50% of what a journey person makes. So journey person is like apprentice speak for experienced person holding the role that the apprentice is training for. But the floor is always minimum wage. So you cannot go below minimum wage. And then the expectation is that through the progression of the apprenticeship with, you know, at least one wage increase, maybe more than one, they finish the program making about 90% of what that journey person would be making. So go to the next slide. So those are really the core building blocks of what is an apprenticeship. I think there's a lot of perception that apprenticeship is for the trades. It's absolutely not. It is just a earn and learn mechanism that can be applied in any industry, certainly in the ECE and EDU context. So when you're thinking about putting together a program, there are really a few different types of apprenticeship programs. There's what's called a time-based program, and this is sort of the original apprenticeship program, is a time-based program with that 2,000 hours of on the job and 144 hours of RSI. However, there's also something called a competency-based program. And the progression through the apprenticeship in this context is not measured by time, but by demonstrated competencies. And this type of apprenticeship program can be as little as 6 months long or 1,000 hours on the job. And as you're thinking about designing a program, also keep in mind that this 1,000 hours for the competency-based or the 2,000 hours for the time-based, that's over the whole apprenticeship. So you could design a program, and I think we'll hear about one later, where it's spread out over a longer period of time, but they're still meeting those on-the-job thresholds. So it could be designed where they're only working part-time, but they still need to meet that total hour threshold. And then the hybrid program is a sort of a combination of the two above.
You have about a minute, Adele.
Oh, okay. So if you go to the next slide. So we today are going to hear about some programs that are already happening in the Bay Area. And thanks to this RJV, there are new and emerging programs that are also coming up. So I'm really excited about all this work. And I just want to touch very quickly, if you keep going, Kathleen, on the funding component of apprenticeship, which I do think is really important. What I would say, I'm not going to go into the details here, but takeaway from this is there are a lot of funding sources to pay for setting up an apprenticeship program. And specifically in the community college context, the classroom training portion is covered by the state of California. If somebody is an apprentice and they are enrolled in community college courses, those courses are completely free to the apprentice, and the college gets reimbursed for that. So that's a pretty cool foundational funding component that I'd want to make sure you're aware of. And then in addition, there's a whole lot of grant opportunities such as the California Apprenticeship Initiative, strong workforce funding, which I'll say right now, K-12 strong workforce funding is open for applications. That can also be utilized for apprenticeship. So just know that there's a lot of emphasis on expanding apprenticeships. And I think that there's a lot of funding to help you get going in this work. So keep going with my slides. We'll skip over this one for time. So I would just highlight these two funding opportunities that are open right now. I already mentioned the K-12 SWP. You have the link to that. There's also a new funding opportunity with EDA, which is the stimulus bill that was passed back in March. This is funding from that bill, and it's called the Good Jobs Challenge. And so this is open with applications due all the way in January. So again, this is a source of funding that could be considered for setting up new apprenticeship programs. And with that, I will hand it off.
Thank you. Thank you, Adele. And I do want to add that I can share this PowerPoint with anyone at the workshop. The last page is our resource information, so you can feel free to email me, Kathleen White, and I can get it out to you. So thank you so much. Randi, would you like me to share your slides, or would you like to?
No, I'll do it. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll stop share.
Let's see if I can do it right is the question.
Yeah, if you need me to share, I can.
So let's see, hold on a second.
Okay. And I'm going to put in chat.
Are you all seeing the slide or are you seeing my notes?
We're seeing just the slide.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I put my, sorry.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I am putting my email in chat, and we will be happy to send you the entire PowerPoint. Okay, thank you. Randi, take it away.
Okay, so I'm Randi Wolfe, Executive Director of ECEPTS, Early Care and Education Pathways to Success. We're best known for our trailblazing work with ECE Apprenticeships here in California. I have two goals for the next 8 minutes. One is to provide an overview of ECEPTS, who we are, what we do, and where we're heading. And the other is to define two terms that seem to come up over and over again and confuse people. And hopefully with clarifying it, it'll help going forward. So to start, let's just remember who we're talking about and what we're talking about. Nationally, the ECE workforce is comprised of over 1 million workers. They're almost entirely female, largely women of color, and most, or I don't know the statistic, are mothers and first generation college students and so forth. And we know that despite the long-term impact of early education, the wage issue has impacted and stalled everything for generations. These are just a couple of statistics, and this is statistics from 2019. So you can guess it's gotten worse since the pandemic. So ECEPTS approaches these inequities through the lens of workforce development, and we promote the apprenticeship model because of its proven record in so many fields and for such a long time. Apprenticeship is particularly well suited to the field of ECE because teacher quality is the essential component of successful early education, and developing workers' skills, knowledge, and competencies is this essential focus of apprenticeship. So high quality apprenticeships lead to high quality teachers. Through ECEPTS apprenticeships, participants complete at least 2,000 hours of paid on-the-job training. They earn no-cost college degrees and child development teaching permits. They receive steadily increasing wages and are assured of a job upon graduation. But we understand that apprenticeship alone, no one intervention alone, can solve all of the conundrums, the economic conundrums facing the industry. So our work falls into 3 buckets: creating and expanding apprenticeships for the ECE workforce and subgroups within the ECE workforce, field building to elevate the ECE industry as a workforce development priority, and advocating specifically for promoting family-sustaining wages and well-paid career pathways. Over the past 6 years, the viability and potential of ECE apprenticeships has been well established. More than 400 participants have been engaged, not only in our programs, in whatever ECE apprenticeships exist, and ECEPTS is currently working in 10 counties across the state. We've designed apprenticeship programs for 4 segments of the workforce that are listed here. And our apprentices include adults as well as young people who begin their apprenticeship as high school juniors and seniors. Our programs are registered with the California Division of Apprenticeship, as well as the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship. We're currently partnering with 12 community colleges and with 7 community-based organizations, employers, but also First 5 commissions and also resource and referral agencies and so forth. Just to give you a quick sense of what's sort of on our horizons within the 3 buckets that I talked about, in the coming year, we have, the number changes every day, but we have about 8 new programs that are launching and will be launched by the time August of 2022 comes around. Not, assuming we're going to be through the pandemic once and for all, which is, I know, a terrifying assumption. We will have about 18 partnerships going. We will also be sort of starting to launch more of a national network and a national way to think about all this. So, which leads to the field building, which is a part of what we're going to do is sponsor a national conference. It's going to be here in California, February 28th to March 2nd, but it will be national in scope. And for our systems change agenda for the coming year, the 2 things we're mostly going to be working on is the universal TK implementation, which includes the discussion of the ECE credential and the discussion of BA pathways, and also the subsidized care rate reform, which is everything about family child care and all those issues that have been so difficult to move the dial. Which brings me to my last slide. And so this is the 2 terms I want to try and clarify. I'm not going to go through all these details, but Kathleen will share the slides. And if you want, I can tell you where I found these exact definitions. But what I want to explain is this. A sector intermediary, well, an intermediary can be a regional focus or a sector focus or God knows something else. But the idea is the intermediary is the entity that helps bring everybody together, helps accelerate the program development, the design, the registration of the apprenticeship, helps to forge the partnerships that are necessary to make these things work. And with a sector intermediary, they bring a particular level of content expertise. So that, for example, I would not presume to go and be an intermediary for an apprenticeship focused on cybersecurity. I am not the one to do that. But likewise, I don't want someone who's sponsoring cybersecurity apprenticeships to think that they know the culture and the challenges and the strengths of the ECE community. So there's something to working with a sector intermediary that adds value. That's what an intermediary is. An intermediary has nothing to do necessarily with the ongoing forever maintenance and management of an apprenticeship. That's what an apprenticeship sponsor does. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. The apprenticeship sponsor is the entity that is legally responsible for that registered apprenticeship program. The thing is, an intermediary can be a sponsor. That's why it gets confusing. So ECEPTS is both in some cases. But a sponsor can also be a particular business, a consortium of businesses, labor management organization, an industry organization. It's all kinds of entities. They assume the apprenticeship sponsor assumes full responsibility for the administration and operation of the program. What that means is people make the mistake of thinking that an apprenticeship is just like, oh, it's just another version of a professional development program. That's not true. It's a real registered thing with legal obligations. And so the apprenticeship sponsor is taking on those obligations, which means we have to track who dropped out. We have to track demographics. We have to report all kinds of stuff to the Department of Labor and the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And with that is the legal responsibility for ensuring that you meet all the federal apprenticeship and the state apprenticeship regulations. Some of the stuff that Adele mentioned, and that it's an ongoing role. So we don't expect an apprenticeship program to be a one and done. Oh, you got a CAI grant? Great, you can offer this program. And in 3 years, the grant will go away and so will the program. That's not the way apprenticeship is supposed to work. So ECEPTS is sometimes an intermediary and sometimes a sponsor and sometimes both. But the line of the distinction to me is that ECEPTS is a particular model. And we built the model because we're very mindful of the challenges our workforce faces. So we think, for example, that working as a cohort is essential. I won't go into the whys. We've had other workshops. We can talk about that another day. But if a community college or a community-based organization comes to me and says, we want your help as an intermediary starting an apprenticeship, and we say, okay, and we start working on it. And then somewhere down the line, they say, oh yeah, but you know what? We don't want to do this cohort thing. We don't really believe in cohorts. And plus our students are spread out. And anyways, our students will be fine. I will say, okay, that's fine. But then you're not going to be an ECEPTS apprenticeship. Now we can help you develop standards. We can help you register them, but not under the name of ECEPTS. They'll be registered under ABC community-based organization, who is going to be the sponsor for this program. So as we develop this, we are getting, to be frank, we're getting a little bit more and more, what's the word I should use, determined to make sure that when we help apprenticeships launch, these support structures that we think are so important. I should mention, in the 4 years of work that SEIU was doing apprenticeships, we had over 350 apprentices in 2 different counties and the 3 different programs. 11% attrition rate. That is incredibly low, and there's a reason for that. And if you take away all the special supports, embedded tutoring, success coordinator, working as a cohort, thought and attention around language issues, providing technology like laptops and so forth, you take away those supports and guess what? You're not going to have those kind of results. So more and more what ECEPTS is saying to people who want us to give them a hand is, we can be your intermediary and help you get launched. But if you decide, right or wrong, it's not for us to judge. If you decide you want to pursue a program that doesn't align with our model, then we will help you get to the front door, and then we will shake hands and part company. And you are welcome to try anything you want. That's your business, because now it's not, ECEPTS is no longer legally responsible. So that's why I wanted to clarify these things, because people use the terms interchangeably, and they actually play very different roles in the registered apprenticeship system, which is what this is part of. It's a part of the ECE system as well, but it's part of the registered apprenticeship system. And so these definitions become important.
You have 30 seconds.
And I am done.
Great, perfect. You're
I cede the remainder of my time to my friends from Berkeley City.
From Berkeley, all right. Could you stop sharing?
Stop sharing, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Randi. And again, just to repeat, we've had a few folks come in. My email is in the chat. We'll be happy to send you the entire presentation. I'll do that very quickly. And I'm going to assume that you can see that I'm introducing Joya, Chavarin, and Lisa Cook from Berkeley City College, and I like to call them our pioneers in our region. They paved the way, they broke the ice, and they did work with ECEPTS, and they're going to talk about their program. So would you like me to just share and just tell me when to advance?
Yes, advance. Thank you, Kathleen. And thank you, Dr. Wolfe and Kathleen and Adele. We did this together. This work has been in the works for a long time. So just to give you a quick high-level overview, because as Kathleen said, you're going to get these slides. Berkeley City College Teacher Preparation Program is to create agents of change, exceptional teachers. And we focus not just on early care and education and transitional kindergarten, but as well as K-12, career education, and post-secondary. We are a teacher preparation P16 pipeline. We got involved in this work when I was the former workforce development director working for our industry partner, and we were in that world establishing the Head Start apprenticeship program. So I was a co-founder with Dr. Wolfe on that project. And a lot of that came from what we were discussing, that we have a critical workforce shortage. We have a lot of historically minoritized teachers, mostly females, that are increasing their knowledge, their skills, their competencies, but they're not getting the wages. And many of us know about that. And so the apprenticeship discourse allows us to tie those wages to their increased RSI. Next slide, Kathleen. Pressed you through. And so this is just a program summary. You can find it on our website. I just want to focus on the school readiness certificate because our pathway actually starts in high school. We strongly believe that our dual adolescents should have career experiences that help them assess if they want to become a teacher, which we hope that they do. But even if they decide to just do it for 4 to 5 years, through those critical periods of brain development, that would allow them to still go off to be a pediatrician or to go off to be a social worker, to go off and do the things they want to do while working with young children and receiving related supplemental instruction and on-the-job training and mentoring support for them to be the best that they can be while they're in that classroom for 4 to 5 years. So our program begins early in high school and they finish up the apprenticeship when they get to Berkeley City College to obtain an AA degree, and we designed it intentionally that they transfer to get the BA. It is a stackable certificate program that allows for their AA degree and their transfer, because in our initial work, it was with Head Start teachers that required the BA degree to become teachers. And it wasn't necessarily what they were getting the AA degree in, even though that matters and that's very important, but the ultimate goal was that BA degree. So we designed the program to stack in that way. And if our high school students want to go off to CSU first, great, because those classes are intersegmental general education transfer curriculum, IGETC, that leads to the permit and their certification. Continue.
Next slide.
Yes, thank you. And again, you have these slides, but again, we're supporting strengthening the field. We are ensuring that our program is designed in collaboration with our partners, our sector intermediary, to help us and as we do this work in ensuring they're on-the-job training, the cohort learning experience. We're intentionally targeting historically minoritized populations because we want, like we said earlier today, our teachers to reflect the diversity of the students in our state, in our region. Continue, next slide. And we have in our college some wonderful support services that provide job readiness training, our EOPS departments, our CalWork. So a lot of this work internally is just unfragmenting us at the community college, wonderful Berkeley City College, to provide on-the-job training internally, as well as working really intentional with our employer partners to ensure they are ready, they have the soft skills necessary to support them as they enter the workplace, and that our training is aligned to their early learning and development system through our competencies in our state. And then the apprenticeship, like Randi indicated, is legal. There are certain requirements and training that must happen and must be, so we really collaborate intentionally with our industry partners to ensure that the training component is met. Next slide. And again, I'm going brief because I know it's short timing, but I want to just make sure that, you know, the quality matters. It's not just about getting apprenticeship dollars. We really want to create high quality programming for everyone who's engaged in this work to become an apprentice. And so we, of course, have it career oriented, where we have this learning or California early learning development system. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but the piece about this is it's designed as a guided pathway with an intentional focus on equity. You can design guided pathways without being intentional about equity, and our focus is equity. So we're starting with the students in the bridge programs and those who don't necessarily see themselves as becoming teachers. And even if that's the case, you know, becoming great parents, this coursework, this training is foundational. So it's an intentional equity focus. It is portable because we want them to really explore their own interests. You know, we would love for you to be teachers, and that is our push because teaching is what we need in our field. But if you become something else, that's fine. These classes are going to count. That's the other part of it. They're going to count. It's an intentionally designed guided pathway. So it is, you know, allowing those to access other areas that they may have their strengths in. It's adaptable because, as you all know, these regs continue to change. So we stay abreast of our trends, and we hire intentionally, not just the faculty, but the mentoring to support this work, and definitely accountable. As Randi said, Lisa and I was just talking about today, we need to register all of our apprentices. Cross your T's, dot your I's. So this is ongoing monitoring work to improve the quality of the program. And as we talked about, there's so many supports internally and externally through our partnerships to ensure their success, to ensure that they complete, that they get their industry recognized certificates, and that they can transfer, that they can start a job as an on-ramp, stay in that job, get benefits, and earn a livable wage. So that's our program in a nutshell, but I am going to pass it off to my trailblazing Lisa, who couldn't have done this work without you. So go for it.
Introducing trailblazing Lisa Cook from Berkeley City College.
Thank you. I think the only way in which we're trailblazing is that we are completely responsive. And what I mean is that as an administrator, I have very high touch on this program, so that I'm getting educated, through our partnerships. I stay connected to Dr. Wolfe and ECEPTS. I stay connected to the partners that we're working with, and and the faculty. And when that happens, when something happens with a student, or we get information about what needs to change, that we're adaptable. And sometimes, this is new in a lot of ways. And so it's just that I just want to stress that to really, have an equitable program, that commitment has to be on the part of everyone who touches this program, this apprenticeship. And it's deep to the point where you could call me on my cell. I'm going to answer you because it's about this apprenticeship and this is so important. So I just want to say that, it involves, it's amazing what can be done, but to make all of this happen, my college itself or one area of it can't do it. So the apprenticeship model is really beautiful because it makes us, it demands, right? So there are these legal requirements that demand us to participate to the highest level as we should. And that's, I think, where that accountability comes in, that, if you're going to have an apprenticeship program, you have to keep all these things together, and you have to have engagement from everybody in every role. And so I've been very privileged to work with others who are so highly engaged. And whenever anything becomes difficult, it's there's always somebody there and even at the high schools, we tell high schools, if you're going to work with us, if you want to offer these classes and have the students register, that you need to be high touch. You need to be, and we'll do it. But otherwise, we're not interested. I forget who was the one who first put this out to me, but I think it was Pam Shaw from the Y. But when you have apprentices, they're going to succeed. Nobody gets to fail. No one fails a class. They can't. They're apprentices. They have to keep moving forward. So Lisa, do you understand that everyone will succeed? And so I guess that's really the guiding principle, that you're accountable to them to move through, to get their wage bumps and move up. And that means they do well in their classes.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we go to our next presenter, I want to say
There's one more slide, Kathleen. I'm sorry. Did we run out of time?
One more minute, and then
I think we're out of time. But just really quick, we launched our fall 2021 our youth efforts. So we have 20 students at our local high school, and this is the map that just shows what we just talked about, how there's embedded supports that comes from the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, and just letting you all know. I'll put our contact in the chat, but we're very committed to this work, and like Lisa said, it's high touch, and you have to have a will to keep it. It's a lot, and we keep learning. The more we learn, you have to be adaptable and portable. And so just thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Well, what I was going to say to both of you was thank you for being you. You are amazing role models for our region. So thank you so much. And I'll paraphrase the great Lisa Cook when we were at a teacher preparation pipeline meeting and we said, we don't have enough teachers, we have a teacher shortage. And she said, they're like fish swimming in the ocean. You just have to shine a light. You suddenly see all the fish. And we're the lights. You're all the lights, we're the lights. The future teachers are there. We just have to shine the light, give them a pathway, and they'll all start swimming toward us. So thank you, both of you, so much. Much appreciated. I'm gonna keep sharing. So, Even says thank you. How great. I'd like to introduce Tina Watts with Skyline College, and she's going to tell you about her developing program, both at Skyline and the San Mateo County Community College District is moving forward, I believe with Kenyatta and CSM. So Tina, tell us about your program.
Yes.
Advanced slide.
I'll tell you when. I'm Tina Watts. I'm from Skyline College. I'm the lab school director at Skyline College, and I'm representing the 3-district San Mateo County Community College District. So while I'm from Skyline, our apprenticeship is district-wide, and this has been why we're still emerging, because it takes a lot to coordinate 3 college campuses, but it's been actually one of the benefits of our coordination. And so what you're seeing here in my first slide is just an overview of what we've come to in like the first year. So I came to apprenticeship from the lab school perspective, looking for affordable, cost-effective staffing that also supported student learning, because our lab school, while it does provide a student service, falls under instruction. And so we kept trying to find a way to get students more experience while they took their courses, because I kept hearing in the halls of my building, I'll wait until I finish with my degree and then I'll work. And I thought, ooh, that's maybe not what we want for a career tech program. And so what you're seeing here is the framework that our team developed between the 3 colleges that really started with the philosophical foundation. So we really want to make sure, yes, we're meeting the employer's needs, but we're also meeting the students' needs for social mobility, for some educational experience and the ability to navigate educational systems so that they don't stop at the community college, they continue going, and they certainly don't just stop at their certificates. And so you'll hear some similar things in our program that you've heard from Berkeley City College and our other panelists here. But essentially, we're looking at the philosophical foundations to support our student success, not just the employer need. How we address teacher development in the various stages of our apprentices moving through our program, certainly aligning coursework, certificates and degrees to be stackable, to be cohorts, to have really dedicated instructors to support the needs of our students, to capitalize on and synthesize the resources that each of our colleges provide. So that's one area as a faculty member, I knew we had counseling and I knew we had A&R, but you really don't understand how integral that is to apprenticeship until you're in it, figuring it out. And so it's really important that you learn to navigate your college systems differently than just from the teaching perspective, so that you can help guide students in that process, and that you really find people who will take the time and focus on the specifics of your program. And then, of course, the practical experiences and community resources. How do we get our students from the college campuses into community programs in ways that benefit them and benefit the employers in our community? Kathleen, you can go to the next slide. So we adopted this from a Learning Policy Institute report that came out. And essentially, we've been using this graphic to really highlight what's going on with our students. Our students stop at the red circle. They get their certificates, they go out with 12 units, they work in programs, and they never finish. And it takes them years and years and years. And we looked at our data, and it was like 7 to 13 years for students to get an associate's degree, which, you know, if you know the wages in early ed, that is like, you know, poverty for decades, right? We definitely don't want that for our students, and we need to look at ways to support them. And so really the green arrows are the resources that we're going to provide through apprenticeship. And of course, the green circle is where we want our students going, especially with all of the changes happening in the state now. I tell every student that I meet with in my classes, hey, I understand you got to work. We get that, but we also want you to continue on in your general ed. We want you to get the associate degree. We really want you to move to the bachelor's. It puts you in the best spot for you to get, wages that are going to work for you, certainly in the Bay Area, right? Next slide, please. And so this is just a sample, a brief sample of how we've built out what we're hoping to be a 3-year cohorted experience that has students moving from the associate teacher permit all the way up to the master teacher permit. This is designed for part-time employment, full-time students. Now we know that that's not our entire workforce, and we understand that there's going to have to be parallel pathways that address incumbent workforce, that address family childcare, that incorporate dual enrollment, both adult ed and high school. But we're starting with the new students because we figured that would help us at least align some of our course sequences. And the goal around course sequences is really to have not only our ECE classes in a way that makes sense for what students are doing out in the community, but to really be able to maximize our resources for our general education. So finding those right instructors, making sure that they're offered at times and in modalities that work for our students, and then really making sure that they have those resources. And it might be called something different at each of your institutions, but the on-the-job training part, we're looking at a variety of combinations that are kind of emerging right now through the college systems, which is of course cooperative education or work experience, paid employment either at the child development centers on campus or out in community programs. And then at some point, we hope to explore credit for prior learning, although we don't know exactly what that'll look like yet. Some of you might be more advanced in terms of what credit for prior learning might look like at your campus, but that's one of the areas. It's a placeholder for us right now. Next slide. And then this is kind of not the perfect graphic, but the best one I could find. This is one of the unique pieces of the apprenticeship program that we're building, is that not only are we trying to, like every other college, synthesize our college systems, we really want to maximize our community resources in a way that the community colleges become the hub. So rather than just partner with individual employers, we want to make sure that we're giving everybody the opportunity. So family childcare, for-profit private, nonprofit private, state funded, federally funded. We really want to make sure that we are able to support all of the early education workforce and businesses in San Mateo County, and to look for opportunities to help embed apprentices into their sites. We want to braid in QRIS. We want to use the resource and referral agencies, and certainly maximize the resources from our County Office of Ed, with the idea, of course, that students would get their associate degrees and hopefully continue on to the 4-year, which would be part of our responsibility as the college too, to make that a seamless process. So this is actually a really big process, and that I think is what is, we're going low and slow in how we're rolling this out, because it's going to take a lot of energy, and I think our field and our area certainly is ready for it. So we're looking at it to support countywide San Mateo County with maybe some fringes of San Francisco or Santa Clara. But the idea that we really want to use the systems that exist to start, and then continue to have dialogue to see how we can be better within our regional area. I think that's it.
That's the last slide?
Yeah.
Oh, Tina, good.
Thank
you. And so Tina's representing a multi-college district. So she would be your resource person for information on that, which is, as you said, more challenging, and is at the formation stage of her apprenticeship program. So Tina, thank you. If you want to put your email in the chat, also if people have direct questions for you, and again, email me for the presentation in total. So thank you so much. Much appreciated. And a shout out to Tina. She's on her first day of her Child Development Center opening, and she's here with us. So
it's quiet. I can hear it. It's quiet.
Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your commitment. I'd like to at this time introduce Tracy Burt from City College of San Francisco. She'll be also talking about an emerging model that is just starting actually this week. It's started, although
we just had our first student hired. Our first apprentice was hired yesterday, and our second apprentice was just offered a job this morning. They just emailed me, so it's very exciting. I thought, because I don't have the same kind of beautiful graphics that everybody else has. Then I thought, well, what could I offer this conversation? If you could go to the next slide. Thank you. That would be a little bit different. And so I'm just going to do a quick overview and show you some of the materials that I've created that are student facing. So we are an early childhood and special education apprenticeship program. So students are earning both certificates in special education as well as their permits. And it's an associate's degree program. So over 2 or 3 years, I think they're going to be earning their associate's degree and their 2,000 hours. And our partner is the school district, and it turns out it's really complicated to work with the school district. So, we've been working with them. Kathy and I have been on a pre-apprenticeship or a prepare pipeline initiative group for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. So we've been really in deep collaboration with folks for a long time. And we have a very small SWP grant right now. So I'm super excited about the program. And there are definitely challenges just getting through the system. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the apprenticeship program, and I'm happy to, answer any questions offline or, via email afterwards. Next slide, please. So this is the process for students. There's an online orientation, then we have applications, interviews, then they have a kind of a soft handoff to San Francisco Unified, where there are about 5 steps in the process, major steps, and then they get hired, and then I repeat. So that's, I guess, also my process. And so we did the first, we actually created our program. We anticipated that we were going to be able to work with dual enrollment students. Kathy actually was part of this building a really robust dual enrollment partnership. And we were expecting last summer 600 dual enrollment students to be interning in San Francisco Unified. Then COVID hit, so we actually put the pause on this and we started it up. That's why we started last spring instead, because San Francisco Unified didn't have positions, even remote positions. And part of what's happening now is that there's some restructuring of positions so that the program that we've been creating it doesn't fit with what's happening now in COVID. So we're just trying to be flexible. We'll be looking at other employer partners soon once we get some of these kinks worked out. So this was just the first flyer that I made. The next slide, please. So I have this image of a funnel. So like over the last few months, I've had 3 orientation sessions. So 130 interested students came to these sessions. From there, 35 folks applied. I interviewed 18 people. Most of the people who didn't get interviewed either decided not to show up for their interview, or they, I'm not sure why the other folks didn't get interviewed. I don't remember. I mean, I didn't screen anybody out. I basically contacted everyone. So some people didn't respond to my emails. I think they just figured it out that it wasn't for them. And so I made 14 verbal offers. So after I interview folks, I give them a verbal offer. And then as I described, I kind of do the soft handoff to the school district, and I'm trying to figure out how to support the process, because all of these folks, well, most of these folks started in June, and we just got people hired. So it's been taking 2 months for really motivated students who already have a lot of coursework, and they're sort of, so anyway, we'll see. We're trying to facilitate the process. So 2 are earning 6 units right now, and they're interested in the apprenticeship program in the spring, because you need the 6 child development units to start. 2 are pursuing special ed elementary placements in San Francisco Unified. So I will say that originally we had wanted to do special ed focused placements, but there is no career ladder, and there are no industry recognized licenses or certificates or permits for special education. So we haven't been able to do that yet. So that's why we're focusing on early childhood and special education.
Paraprofessionals in special ed.
Yes, I made this slide this morning before I found out that one other person was hired.
Okay.
So 6 people are in the process somewhere with San Francisco Unified, either talking to their first informational interview or reaching out to principals or waiting to hear. And then I had 4 people withdraw from the interviews mostly because of the wages. And I'm not sure why everybody didn't. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of that's the most important thing, right? Who are the students? And we're getting a really diverse group, also focused on recruiting and supporting historically underestimated students. So next slide, please.
Can I add, Tracy, that?
Yes, please.
if you're going to say it, I think that we have our own standards that were through the our own apprenticeship standards. And when you said it took 5 years, it took 3 years to really launch those. And they're just available on the website as we speak, as we hope. So the process is long, but we're seeing success this year. So.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, we're going to have more opportunities. So this is just an overview of the process. And I also want to put a plug in for this app called WorkHands. We're working with them. We have a partnership with them. So if you don't know about them, I'm happy to talk to you about them. And so far, it just seems like an amazing way to help motivate students. They get to see their progress on charts, and I'm entering their coursework, and then they're going to enter their hours, so they'll see their progress over time. Yeah, next slide would be great. Thank you. So this is another flow chart, because I'm trying to. It's just really hard to get students through the process. So I'm trying to create tools. I just created this one last week. And diagrams so that they understand what the pieces are, and so that I can remember the pieces and kind of, I don't know, I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of it, honestly. And there's a lot of different pieces. And, I was hoping to have 14 students placed by now and hired, but we're getting there, and we'll get there. So that's I think that was my last slide that I put in.
Tracy, I think your challenge too is working with a large college district, and we are working with a large unified school district. So we can be the poster children for bureaucracies that make these kinds of collaborations more challenging. So.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. We're trying to align 3 different bureaucracies: the City College, the San Francisco Unified, and then the state apprenticeship. So it's we're working it through. Yeah, and I think I am excited that there are students who can work in early childhood and special ed together. And we're doing a community of practice because I just know from my experience with cohorted learning communities that that's necessary. And even though it's not like, I don't know, I just was like, well, we need to do that. And hearing Randi today, I thought, oh, thank goodness I did that. So the students know that they're supposed to come. And then I got great ideas from Joya and Lisa, which I might have heard before, but have been landing in a different way now, so that I have really good ideas for what to do with them in our monthly meetings. And they're just so excited. They're excited to have support. They're excited to have community and really engaged. And so I think that the district has really good wages compared to other employers. So if we have this other employer partner, we're still figuring it out, but the wages are going to be a couple dollars, $1 or $2 less. And then in special ed in our district, if even in early childhood, special ed has a different wage system. So it's about $3 or $4 more per hour to start. So some students will be starting in the special ed ECE positions at a higher wage than the people that are starting as early childhood assistants. So, that's the challenge, I think. And we also in our district, we don't have wage increases based on, when you get a permit, you don't get a wage increase, but you get really good wage increases every year. So they're able to do both at the same time. So that was a really good thing for us to figure out. And all these things, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but I just feel like there's something new that comes up that we have to figure out all the time. And getting all the systems in place is definitely a work in progress.
Thank you.
But it's fun. And it's a wonderful, most of the students that are all but one of the students that are in the pipeline have been my students before. So I feel like the relationships piece is really key. And that means that for me, I really need to keep, reaching out to my students, but maybe figuring out how to get to know more students. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your enthusiasm. And I would also follow you just because you look like you want to be there and you're enthusiastic. And students need that. They need to feel like the people that are bringing them forward are enthusiastic and on their side. So,
Kathleen, can I throw one thought in?
Sure.
And Tracy, I appreciate your honesty. I think everybody does, because everybody thinks they should know the answers, but we've never done this before. So how could we know the answers? So that's number one. But the other thing that you mentioned that I think is worth underscoring is that we are all juggling multiple systems who profess to be interconnected and wanting to collaborate and in many cases don't have a clue what that actually means in practice.
That's right.
So number one, you have school districts who say they want youth apprentices, but make no accommodations to actually create a youth apprenticeship. So you're really just trying to, completely swim upstream.
Yeah.
Then you have the community college system which is being so incentivized to encourage apprenticeships. And yet there's still such a bias towards apprenticeships that earn high wages, which makes the battle to do childcare, special ed, whatever it is, because we had one big high level person in the state say, if you're not being able to guarantee a starting salary of $17 an hour, we're not going to talk to you. We're still getting that after 5-6 years of this, right? And so there's that problem. And then also that within the community college system, the colleges do not all have the same amount of information and understanding. So we're still having to explain to colleges every day that you cannot charge apprentices for tuition and fees. And then they say, okay, once they get convinced that we're right about that, but where are we supposed to get the money? And when Adele was explaining what they can charge, it's like, yeah, but it's a little bit the devil's in the details, because if this college has already allocated all their apportionment funds and you come late to the game, so it's just these. And then you have the apprenticeship system, which is supposed to be working towards having 500,000 apprentices by 2028. We're at 97,000 or something at this point. And so the apprenticeship system in California is not where it needs to be, especially when it comes to new and innovative sectors, which we are one of. I'm saying all that not to say that we should stop trying or that, but that your sense of how complicated this is and how difficult it is not just a shortcoming on your part or your program's part or your college's part.
Thank you. It's good to know. I'm trying.
Exactly. It's the soup that we're in. And you have to really, you have to get up every morning and say, it's sort of like that scene from A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
That A, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And B, it's the hard that makes it great.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. Yeah.
Changing efforts is, we think the work is working with students. That's one part of the work. The other part is we are absolutely up to our eyeballs when systems change. You have to remember that so that you don't get surprised every time you hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to
Thank you, Randi. I really appreciate that. And I also want to give a shout out to our Dean, Monique, Pascal, who has been an incredible support for me. And we meet every other week, and she helps with the stuff working with the state and the apprenticeship stuff. So there's no way I could do this stuff without her helping with that and leading that piece. So it has to be a team effort.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for the insight, Randi. Thank you, Tracy. Our last speaker is, last but not least, is coming up, and I want to make sure you get to hear about the efforts that have been basically a 3-year effort, I believe. I've been involved for 3 years to create apprenticeship for after school extended learning workforce, which is part of our pipeline. So I'd like to introduce Aleah Rosario. She's now with the Partnership for Children and Youth, previously with the CAN After School Network, California After School Network. And she was one of the brains behind bringing apprenticeship to this space. So Aleah.
Great. Yes. And in the spirit of, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. This is probably the most emerging maybe of the programs or models that we've heard from. So I can tell you a little bit about who the Expanded Learning Workforce is and why they're such a great kind of partner for all of us to be thinking about, and then to share with you a little bit of the process of developing the apprenticeship standards for this sector, or maybe subsector of the ECU and EDU sector. So expanded learning refers to anyone working in after school, summer learning, out of school time programs. To give you a sense of how California leads the nation in investment in expanded learning, I want to share some of the funding on this slide. So there are existing state and federal funding streams that that support over 4,500 programs across the state of California. As many of you know, the governor's budget and the legislature invested billions more into this system. And so, to underscore the sort of numbers in red is that, there are already 4,500 publicly funded expanded learning programs in communities across California. There's the potential with this new funding for 3,000 more programs. There is, an estimated existing staff of 25 to 30,000 people that work in these programs. That makes the potential, this increased investment makes the potential for about 18,000 more workers that are needed. These are mostly part-time jobs. They're working in classrooms, right, directly with students. And so to think about, not only how to kind of create the pipeline and nurture the pipeline for these folks to continue on into careers and education, but to ready them, right, to do high quality work, to be skilled and confident as they're working with students, especially now, especially in the K-12 sector coming back from COVID. So that's the opportunity right now with expanded learning in California. Next slide.
Those are billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars. So we're talking $5 billion, over the next 5 years that will be injected into this system. What's that?
And will we have the staff?
Exactly. And so, we can't fumble this with the investment and the resources. I mentioned a little bit of, of the workforce and maybe like what they do, but this, our kind of at a glance of the demographics of the workforce mirrors. It's not exactly the same as the ECE workforce, but similar, right? They're mostly women, mostly people of color. I think an interesting thing is up on the top right, the little pipeline, mentions that the majority are pursuing careers in teaching. There was a survey of the people that actually, serve in the site coordinator role. So not the direct service with students, but they oversee sort of the frontline staff. Almost 30% of those site coordinators want to become teachers. And so, that's a huge opportunity, right? To like help them, along the pathway. You can see the education levels, right? Less than 30% actually have a bachelor's degree. The other interesting thing is that, unlike the ECE field, expanded learning doesn't necessarily have permits or required credentials to work in this field. And so I think that's both an opportunity and a challenge when we're talking about building an apprenticeship model. But it does allow us some flexibility, right, to define what those competencies are, what the learning is and the training that's needed. And that's what we've done. You go to next slide. Part of my role, as Kathy mentioned, was to coordinate what we called the Expanded Learning Workforce Implementation Committee. That committee's charge had a larger scope than just developing an apprenticeship. The purpose of that committee was to advance the development of a diverse expanded learning workforce. They focused on 3 main goals, and that's what's in this Venn diagram right now. They were tasked with thinking about how to strengthen the career pathways and PD. They were tasked with developing or informing a data collection system. We don't have good labor market information of this sector. And then the third goal that they focused on was what they described as addressing barriers to economic mobility and success. So what are the actual strategies that think and recognize the system level barriers? And so that was where kind of this exploring and developing an earn and learn or an apprenticeship model came out. And that was part of the charge. Next slide. So there were about 25 participants on this committee. They represented mostly what we would call employers or expanded learning providers. What I thought of when we're talking about, one of the systems being the school districts that we need to navigate. The interesting thing is that most expanded learning workers actually are employed by community-based organizations. So even though school districts receive the funding, most subcontract out with the community-based organization. So there's a little bit, again, of flexibility and creativity that can happen when we get to work with employers that are community-based organizations. And so, again, the committee was made up of a majority of expanded learning providers or employers. They included both community-based organizations and school districts, along with some other stakeholders in the field, to really think about, what would be the standards of an apprenticeship program for this field. They narrowed in on, students that are 18 to 25, maybe just graduated graduated high school, early or limited, college experience that, that needs support kind of along their pathway. We also thought about sort of existing or incumbent staff that would benefit from a formal training pathway, right? The sort of pathway that was designed or thought about for this apprenticeship was, first that they kind of earn entry-level employment. And again, the standards and requirements for working in expanded learning is mostly accessible. And, there are examples of being able to work with school districts that have the authority to set the requirements for entry-level employment. And so that will require, partnership to think about how do we ensure parents or family members, can access these jobs while they get the training, and the support to meet the requirements, which is what's listed here as number 2, which is passing the instructional assistant exam, right? That may be kind of a low barrier to entry for some folks, but that still can be a barrier, right? And so this apprenticeship program would, help them pass that IA exam and then ultimately lead to an AA degree. I think we talked about this program being 2 to 4 years, Kathleen, is that right?
Yeah, at least 3 to 4.
At least 3, yep. And then, if you go back to the last slide there, I listed the competencies, right, that were identified that, one, someone learns and experiences while they're working in expanded learning. And, it's about defining them, making sure that the employer knows that these are the competencies that are being developed, as well as, the guide for working with a community college partner to ensure that these competencies are reinforced in the classroom instruction. So I think that's all I have to say. Again, we're sort of earliest in the stages of this program where we have the design, and the next steps would be to start identifying the employer sponsors and partners, as well as the community college partners to launch this program and help meet the workforce challenges in the expanded learning field.
Thank you, Aleah. We've given this poor group here of 40 people a lot of information. So I believe you've had your money's worth for this free conference. Aleah is available through email. Would you mind putting your email in the chat? I wanted to make sure we covered the extended learning workforce. And I just want to say that you defined it as 30,000 employees, but that's publicly funded. And you know, most of the extended learning programs are privately funded. I'm going to hazard a guess that it's about 200,000 when you look at the numbers of children that need care, and probably only a third are getting any kind of care. And that includes family childcare providers filling in, YMCAs, recreation departments. This is one field where we cannot identify the workforce because the SOC codes and the job title codes do not exist. So got work to do. And thank you for your leadership, Aleah, in this effort. It's been quite a journey. And thank you for being here also. So we don't have that much time for questions. We've got our next workshop starting shortly. We may have, if anyone sees a few burning questions in the chat, we've got a few minutes. If you want to just ask one of the particular panelists your burning question. If not, you've got everyone's email. And I don't see burning questions arriving, but I'll wait for the burn. And wait a few moments. You know how to reach all of us. We've tried to give you an overview of, let me put this up so you can see all the emails here summarized. We've tried to give you an overview of kind of the apprenticeship activity, both in our region. The extended learning activity has been statewide, but we have a lot of regional interest in after school and extended learning pipelines. And Randi, let's see, do you want to just ask your question to everyone, or?
No, it's not a question, it's a comment. When you said that the workforce is all over the place, so it's hard to, how did you put it, Kathleen, that the codes, well, you know, you can create a new apprenticeable occupation with the Department of Labor. That's what we did for the early childhood teacher. There was, until last September, there was no apprenticeable occupation of early childhood teacher. And we had to create it. And there's a process you go through, but it's not an easy process, but it's not a backbreaker. And if you did that, then you would have a way to actually formalize the workforce, identify the workforce. And Aleah, you and I, or people at the can have that conversation. I can tell you what it takes and put you in touch with people who can help.
I think the other issue with him is making sure the employers are all on board with changing, you know, job descriptors. For instance, you know, park and recreation assistants do some of this work, as do teacher aides, paraprofessionals.
But a lot of the apprenticeable occupations are buckets like that, like social service workers or teacher aide one. And so it could be that it's okay. You can have it. So let's say we had an apprenticeable job called Excel worker. That's not what it would be called, but let's say you could have an apprenticeship where there is a playground supervisor who's in the Excel 1 apprenticeship. That works, that you can do.
Right.
They don't have to all be in the same job at all, but there's this sort of common thread.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think we have a lot of, oh, we have a raised hand. Sion Chun Burbank.
Yes, pardon, I don't use the video because I'm taking 2 antibiotics. Yes, pardon on there. Just wondering that more and more colleges offer online programs, you know, like even community colleges. And I'm just wondering how we can use this model for those online programs.
Well, I'll just answer generally that due to the pandemic, 100% of our community colleges went remote. Not necessarily online, but remote, meaning that not all the faculty were trained in online instruction, but they had to go remote. My belief is now that this year we're hybrid. Many of us are still remote and online and in person. That some of these options are going to stay because students are going to want them. And the students that are successful are going to speak up with their feet.
Agree.
So, but right now we're still in the pandemic, and I'm sure all of you who are teaching at a community college can agree that we have hybrid, remote, online distance learning. We have, we haven't gone to in-person 100%. So thank you. So
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, that what that offers us is some flexibility in the way that students complete the coursework that's needed. And sometimes the travel, the transportation, and those things can become challenges in this programming. And so if we're able to, I guess we just have more, like we have more options to be flexible. And sometimes, when students are, they're going to be working and studying, things come up. And it's my hope in our program that we would be able to offer flexible, like attendance where the class would be meeting in person, but if you couldn't make it, that you could come in online in the classroom. And so I think a lot of schools are moving toward that capability. It might take some time. Of course, it's not going to happen in the immediate, but that's the kind of responsive planning for students that are working at the same time as attending school. So, and with traffic and all the things that come up, childcare issues, whatever comes up for students. So we're just always looking for more ways to be responsive, again, to provide equitable access to these opportunities. So the online piece can provide, equitable access.
I would add to that, that's one of the benefits of working with multiple colleges within a district, is that we can talk about the different modalities and offer them at varying times, including weekends, evenings, so that we can be meeting the needs of students. And so that is conversations part of the coordination with, if you're working with a sister college or multiple colleges, that you're looking at how you can support students, but also benefit the enrollment of the colleges as well, so that you're not competing against, course offerings or timings or things like that.
Good point, Tina, because right now the budget constraints are significant as our enrollment has dropped. And I think for many of us, this is also true for the general education courses that some of our students need to complete. We don't control those departments, and everyone is under, the pressure to have the highest enrolled courses succeed. So anything that's designer, one-off, moderately enrolled gets cut. So, I think we need some external funds to elevate this.
The one caution I would throw in about online, everybody, and it's understandable why, but everybody's looking for shortcuts and the quickest, easiest pathway. And within the apprenticeship world, outside of ECE, there's no reason not to do that. Let's get this cybersecurity person trained as quickly as possible that they can start earning. I get a little worried about trying to find a shortcut. It goes back to the discussion I was trying to say about the support systems we put in, and it particularly goes back to what Joya was talking about in terms of putting equity at the center. So it's not that I have an objection to utilizing any format, online or not, but it can't be in place of or without the whole picture of what are the supports our student body needs to succeed. That's got to be the driving force. And that means we also have to fight the systems that would say, we don't have money for that, or we don't have, it's like, what? The pandemic has taught us, ignore our workforce at your own peril. Mm-hmm. And I would say the same thing is true of quality. You do not want us to turn out unqualified or lesser qualified teachers. That is not going to help anybody in the long run.
Yeah, every sector depends on us. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Our next set of workshops will happen at 2:15. So you have a little bit of a break. And Aleah is asking any examples of success with credit for prior learning. That has just rolled out. So I would say, I don't know of any. I'm on the statewide TPP group. I'll ask that question. I'll pose that question, because that is a way to build units and progress towards degree completion, the credit for prior learning. I think that's an area that's just unveiling. Lisa, do you agree? Because you're going to different meetings than I am. That seems very new.
Yeah, it's very new, but super important. I think that in the field, people have been, working hard to try to get credit for their prior learning. It's been a big barrier that we have a lot of people that I think Joya can speak to this really well. I'm going to stop and ask Joya to say something actually. You know, you've been doing this thing.
No, internally, of course, but I came from military childcare. They've been doing it for years, and there are also other systems that we can take best practices. And there are some trailblazing community colleges where we had to do credit for prior learning to get the transfer. So, you know, there is work happening, but I'm looking forward to working with my trailblazer internally to make it happen at Berkeley City. But we used to do it all the time when we were career advocates with CARES funding. There is a credit for prior learning experience system.
Okay.
So
So
the idea is to make it as easy as possible, right? Like to remove barriers, like have a way to do it for all of us.
Remove barriers, but don't take away knowledge.
Exactly.
I love that. That's our next, gotta repeat that one.
Yeah.
The
I
brilliant
know I
Catherine
sound a little like
Brown.
Randy here, but I gotta say that.
So true.
Kate, I
Well
know
said.
that voice. Didn't see your face, but I know your voice.
Hi,
That's our new
Catherine.
technology.
I didn't hear what Kate said, remove barriers, but what?
But
Not-
don't leave out knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh,
You see, that's that shortcutting that actually won't create a better teacher. Yeah.
Right.
Right,
both.
right.
Right. So thank you so much. Love the panel, love all of you. Thank you for spending your time with us during lunch, and we'll see you at the next session. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for organizing this. Great job. That was super helpful for me.
Yeah, me
You
too.
were-
I appreciate being included.
All of you. Thank you so much.
It's great. Bye, everyone.